Hey everybody, welcome back to JNJtabletop. I am the real Josh T, and we have the one and only Captain RoBear here uh,
Yes.
for
How's it going,
another
gentlemen?
installment of Table Talk. It's good to see you, Captain RoBear. How you doing tonight?
Good to see you all.
I believe the expression is Captain on the bridge.
Yes, sir. Ahoy! I think I should say.
Yes. That's for my inner Star Trek
the
nerds out
nautical
there.
specialties out of the way.
Yes.
Man. So if this is your first time here, we like to do a series. We call it Table Talk, just a little podcast format where we will get a tabletop RPG content creator, somebody in that sphere, get them on, and then we'll just get to know them, let them talk about everything they have going on, and you know why they like tabletop things and why they're making content. So if that sounds interesting to you, then hang out because we're going to learn all about Captain RoBear today. We do have a command in chat, so you could find all of his things. Jake, what did we name that command?
It's both RoBear and Captain RoBear, but let's see if I can do it right.
Let's see.
There
All
it
the
is.
commands.
There we go.
I command you.
Look at you sniping the Twitter solo. That's smart.
Yes, sir.
I would have made 7 different commands and been pissed off that I'd made 7 different commands and then spelled them incorrectly. So
It's so useful because if ever you update something that, and someone is like, hey, don't these guys hang out with RoBear once in a while? Be like, yeah, hit RoBear. There you go. It's always right.
ding, fries are done.
Yes. It was a while ago. I couldn't tell you how long ago. I saw you tweeted about the game HeroQuest. Now, this is a deep cut. This is
Yeah.
back when we were
yeah.
children. And I was like,
Yeah.
I wonder if that was his gateway drug into TTRPGs. We always love to start with like what got someone into
Yeah.
D&D.
On a board game platform, 100%. It was the original piece was some of those old Dragonlance, like choose your own adventure. Like, and I don't even know they probably weren't even, they were probably like burners or rewrites, and they just slapped like Brunor and Wolfgar like on the side, and they're like, yeah, look at this awesome fantasy art. But they were choose your own adventure like D&D books, so like it was essentially like solo play. And I picked that up after Chronicles of Narnia, and I was like, oh man, this is awesome. So my aunt read that to me, and I'm like, this is, oh man, this is my jam. I already came from a household that was like heavy into like an 80s adventure fantasy movie scene, so I already had like a really good pulp background, and this was like kind of giving my imagination those first tools. So then when HeroQuest came around, oh man, that was like we would die waiting for people to come over and play HeroQuest. But yeah, I was saying that those winter nights, man, they remind me of playing for the first time and getting the layout and deciding like, all right, how are we going to GM this thing as like a couple of kids on the block? Because everybody, we all want to play. Nobody, the concept of being a GM or a dungeon master was very foreign at that point, especially at that age. You're all trying to experience the adventure. Now, luckily, I had an older brother. So he enjoyed tormenting for a little bit, but he also, because we played Gauntlet, like old school Gauntlet for arcade rats. So for us, that was an extension of Gauntlet, and like that whole like Heroes Quest and getting the 4-player hookup for the old NES, which was unheard of then for that kind of couch co-op. Because other than that, it was take your fistful of quarters to the arcade and play until you starve on Gauntlet.
He's crowded around the machine.
100%. Yeah. So that's where it cut deep. And then I got a Dragon's Quest, and I'll be honest, the Dragon's Quest was just so far above the level of where I was at, but I got some miniatures, and it had all that Elmore artwork in it, and it was just like, okay, this is it. I love this, and that's what got my start in fantasy. But I always love to hear who else got, like, HeroQuest is such a good system. The fact that it went dormant for so long is crazy.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, for anyone that's familiar with our table talks, like I was a kid, like my stepdad and my mom would play, and I think I was like 8 or so, something like that, when I started playing D&D, and it was like this mishmash of like first and second edition, and kind of whatever my stepdad said was cool was like, all right, yeah, like here we go. And it's just, I've been hooked ever since. Yes, Baron, I know I was a kid. It did happen at some point.
Long time.
For those that don't know about Heroes Quest, what they do right, other than the fact that it's set up and it's prefab and it's pick up your character sheet as a cardboard cutout, but it has the cards laid out as spells. It's very easy for the uninitiated to go, this is a board game, but it's also a dungeon crawler. And its dice system, it has dice that are attack based, where you see skull and bones, or you see shields, and that's how it does it. Like, you got to roll 6 skulls above 3, they only have 3 shield dice, and you roll those, and it does a simple mathematical simple dice calculation, and it's incredibly addicting and easy to learn. Like, anybody can pick up, like, you could roll into a cocktail party and go, we're throwing down Heroes Quest right now, and you could have anybody hooked inside the room without having to explain a thing. It's just straight intuitive dungeon crawl.
That actually sounds incredible.
I want to go to that cocktail party.
I've never played Heroes Quest. I'm a little I am fairly new into the tabletop RPG scene. I think I've been around for, what's it been, like 5 years now, something like that.
Well, yeah, it was. Had you just turned 21? Because I remember being like,
I don't.
I remember being like, because we're going to be bringing some snacks and beverages. I want to make sure we're. Well, that was the funny thing.
I mean, you say that's young, but like, I've only been back for 5 years.
Okay.
I took, oh my God, for a huge break in between playing.
Sure.
Just because video games got so good. Playing D&D is hard. It requires friendships and people to show up and wanting the same thing out of life. And during that, it was like, no, when I get off of the bar, I'm going to log on to World of Warcraft, and I'm going to play this, because this world is incredible and immersive. And they're there for a while. Those games all took a hit, but they're different. What you learn over time is you're not receiving the same kind of dopamine hit. You're not playing as a child, and that's very, very different. You're not creative thinking. It scratches the itch, but then all of a sudden you realize, what am I doing it daily for? What does this mean? There is no narrative here. I'm in a feedback loop. I'm in a hamster wheel. It looks like I'm telling a story, but I'm really not. I'm actually just engineered to want to enjoy this. And then you realize that you want to tell stories again and go down that route. And it's very difficult, especially when you get back into where tabletop games are now and how good and supportive they are with the storytelling. You're incredibly critical on games now, because you can point out, like, man, this is just a gotcha. This is just a feedback loop. This is it. Unless they're doing a good job of actually letting you make narrative choices, you're like, what was it? I could choose anything and I still get the same outcome. And D&D, that's the ultimate drug, right?
Well, nobody knows how it's going to turn out, not even the DM. And that's really the most fun part, I think.
100%. It's the group collaboration of what you create out of it. That's the cake.
I think you just put to words why I don't really play a lot of video games anymore, and like RPGs and that kind of thing. Like,
you're hard on them. They gotta be good.
Yeah.
And now, let me ask you this: do you find an affinity for older ones that are, say, graphical downgrades, things that are pixel art? Okay, so there's a little science in this. Those NES, those 16, those 8-bit, we're going through a process that they're giving us a game and they're giving us a framework, but they're not giving us all the details. So our mind is putting the picture together as if we're playing a tabletop game or we're reading a book. Because you look at that piece of pixel art, and the way that you look at that pixel art, we'll all three have different depictions of what that hero looks like, because we're reimagining them in our own mind's eye. And that's the power of pixel art and what we came up with in those older ones. They scratch a little bit of that itch that you can't get with something that's 100% CGI based. There is no choice of deciding what this character looks like. It is presented. That is what they are. And that's the beauty of games like Octopath Traveler that came out, ones that are doing pixel art, but they're elaborating on what they can do with it, with running it in the real Unreal Engine, and they're getting cool shadows and God rays in additions to it. But at the end of the day, we're still reimagining what that character looks like in our head. And that's the power, and that's that piece that we hold with D&D. So it's cool to see that kind of like shift back, and why it's shifting back some ways, not just because of a generation that loves an old art form. There is a science behind it, why it makes us feel the way that we do.
I think that's interesting because like it almost, I don't want to say like it sets the bar lower, but I guess it just sets the door open, and that's that's part of the beauty. I wouldn't have thought about that, and I really like the way you phrase that. Have you actually like read articles about that?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
That's
like,
awesome.
How you fill in the holes, and it's not necessarily directed towards pixel art, but it's how your brain fills in the gaps of why we enjoy books so immensely versus we do any other presented art form, because we're developing the canvas completely ourselves. And there is a connection to that. That's making a memory. The same thing that we do when we sit down at the table and we create these images together. We experience that. That memory is real. Our brain does not decipher any differently from when we fought that dragon to when the lizard ran up my leg the first time when I'm like walking into a house in Florida. Like, it's the same experience inside your mind, which is hilarious, and it hacks you that way. And you can equate that to a lot of different things.
That's very interesting. That's also the first time hearing about that, and I'm gonna have to read some articles too, because that's
100%.
Yeah, that's awesome.
We're going deep tonight, boys.
Yes.
So it sounds like you played a good amount of systems, and then you said the break to so did you
not really. I haven't I'll be honest, haven't played a lot of systems. Most of what I played is a lot of made up like anybody else. I played we played AD&D in Boy Scouts. It was the old AD&D manual. We're kids. What is childhood D&D look like? Yeah, and not much different than what it does. It's 80% fart joke, and then like adventure, and you fight some kind of a weird classic D&D creature, or something that's like a deformed squirrel. Like it was always weird stuff, and we had a lot of rainy campouts. So yeah, we played some D&D, but it's only as good as your DM is. And at that time, as a child, you're not understanding the dynamics of how a table works. And if you do, you're a childhood prodigy. You understand the social dynamics of people early on. Congrats, you're gonna make it in life. But at that time, you're usually gonna get pissed off at your DM, and you're gonna be like, "This is stupid and not fair, and I don't dig this." And all of a sudden, if you have, not everybody's gonna be on the same page. Very hard to get everybody there. So you're gonna gravitate towards, man, I wish we had the Heroes Quest board. That's what I would always say when we're playing it. I was like, man, we should have brought the Heroes Quest board. This would have been way cooler. And I went from that AD&D and that experience to like, I equate everything. The minute that I got my car keys, there is a shut off. And that's what they would always talk about in Boy Scouts. Like, you're not progressing any further. Once you get your car keys, your mind is set on what your goal is. And let me tell you, as a man who grew up in the Midwest, very much like dazed and confused. The minute you got your car keys, it was about running to beer busts and talking to women and not being interested in playing D&D on Friday nights. Like that wasn't happening. Now I was still doing a lot of nerdy stuff. Like you would still get together with your nerds and be like, "Hey, did you hear Lord of the Rings is getting remade. You know that? Like, you get together with, like, you knew who read fantasy on, like, the football team and everybody else. You're like, yeah, like the one dude you knew that read the Silmarillion. You're like, yeah, hey, things getting remade, man. You want to go to the movies? You want to do this? You want to do that? So, like, I was still firmly rooted in it, but, like, video games could fill that void. I could go and do it anytime. And there wasn't a big reason. We're still doing multiplayer, but we weren't doing sit down tabletop. And eventually, you know, those winters with the family wore off, and there wasn't anybody laying around to play HeroQuest anymore. So what are we playing? We're playing the most advanced other side scrollers, like literal D&D the game. All those things would fill the void, but they never were. They never were like playing at that HeroQuest table the first time and like opening up the scene book and being like, what's in here? What do I see? What do I roll for? Like, that surprise that never came back until way later in my life. So I didn't, you know, that was 5-6 years ago when I'm in my bar office and I turn on Twitch while I'm doing my end of day, counting money at the drawer. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, are you kidding me? There's a bunch of people streaming D&D right now. I'm like, this is going to be a train wreck. And that's when I clicked on Critical Role stream for the first time. And like many people were like, oh man, this is great. This feels like old times when we were kids down in the basement. Cause you don't think about voice acting when you're a kid. You just do it. You're like, you know, you do all the little voices and stuff like that as a kid. Cause you don't care. You have the microscope isn't on you. You could care less of what people think about you. You haven't let the world taint you yet. And that's where you picked up and you saw, oh man, sweet. They're doing improv and some cool amateur acting. And then you realize they're not amateurs at all. And it becomes
very much not.
And you want a slice of that. And I was like, oh man, I could really go for those HeroQuest good times again. I should throw a game together. This would be great. And I just picked it up. I went and grabbed what the current books were, and I knew of 4th and 3.5, like, and I wanted no part of Pathfinder. Dude, like where it had gotten to with like 3.5, who was left playing the hobby were not anybody I wanted to play with at that point, because it was quant based and it was tactile and it was win or lose. And I wasn't there for that. That were the groups that were around in my local game stores and in my area. That's not what was going on everywhere else, but that was what was going on in my sphere. And I wanted no part of that because they weren't telling story. It wasn't epic, and they were nerds. That was it was the folks that worked at the Rubbermaid plant that were bored, made the most sophisticated math system they could make. I wasn't there for that. That's not the story I wanted to tell. But they were having their own fun, and that was not what I wanted. So it was about finding my table again in that process. And, you know, luckily, I'm doing this at a tavern. So I spent 14 years in the bar business. At that point in time, it'd been about a decade. So it was very easy to be like, do you want to play D&D in my basement? It was like, of the tavern, like it was this huge list. There's no like, it was like, yep, yes, I would. Yes, I would. So a very different experience from like coming as a child and running out of people to play HeroQuest with in the basement to all of a sudden like, okay, I have unlimited power as far as people that I want at my table.
I mean, it had an incredible surge in popularity. I guess around 5-6 years ago is when it really popped off. And I think obviously Critical Role had a huge part to do with that.
Yeah, but Critical Role in 5th edition.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because it made things simpler. It took it and it made it like you said, it became a story that you're telling again. It became
it gave tools for storytellers and made it easy. Advantage, disadvantage, they got it. Like if it hadn't been 5th edition, you wouldn't have seen that kind of pop. If they were sitting there and they had still been playing Pathfinder, and you can still see it whenever they played that original game. That game would come to a standstill when they would get to the gunslinger class and Percy's turns in different pieces, because there were old leftover clunks of Pathfinder, and all of a sudden modifiers are clogging up and you're like, whoa, but we have this interesting, super cool narrative going on. We just spent 15 minutes to find out that Percy jammed his gun again.
Yeah.
It was brutal. Like, think about how hard that was when you originally watched campaign 1 spoilers. Sorry for you. Percy's gun explodes, half of it.
Yes.
Because it's an old, brutal, trying to be a simulation of early Black Powder Pathfinder class. And it's awful on your character. But like, some people want that, like the Tinkerer Inventor, and that's what they had come up with. And it was supposed to be super raw. But when you have 9 people at the table, you got to get moving.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a very large group.
Not envy. Yeah. What? No.
Usually, once I hit 4 or 5 players, I'm like, all right, we doing this? We doing this? Okay.
I'm very happy with my 4 players.
When you have a high count, you have to have players that really, really respect each other and love each other and want each other to succeed. Our group that I did a commission game for, and there's a bunch of them here hanging out in chat right now, that did Rime of the Frost Maiden. They learned that firsthand, that if you don't love each other as players and sit down, like, this could be a miserable experience. But they did awesome, and they learned how to prop each other up and put the spotlight on each other and regulate it and go back and forth and not hog the table. It's what you have to do, and if you don't, it's just chaos. I was very, very proud of them, because that was the early sessions are absolute bananas with that many voices, but they're trying to find their own voice at the same time. And nothing wrong with that. That's why I threw them into chaos and combat at the very beginning, because I knew it was just going to be it's a good time.
It is back to being a kid again.
It is.
Everything goes back to Animal and the Muppets.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I think I know the answer to this question, but so what's your favorite system? I mean, it sounds like if I had to answer for you, it's HeroQuest and 5e.
I mean, 5e beats everything, like, because it's my own homebrew version over the top of it. It's not even like, it barely looks like 5e anymore. It's the rule of cooled 5e all over it. Like, try to cram as much stuff into a bonus action as we can, so you can go do dope. Like, that's my goal. Like, I don't do the whole action economy of like, oh, if I'm going to buff up, I lose my turn. Well, when it comes to D&D as a show too, combat's going to be 3 to 4 rounds. This is a fact. It's not moving past that. It's what you have time for. So, hey, let's rip that mage armor before we go in. Let's do this. Let's do all the fun things and get to the nuts and bolts. It's okay. I'll raise all the damage up, and I can raise, because we play very heroic. It's Avengers style. So I'm just going to raise the damage. It's going to be a real simple calculation for all you new DMs out there. You want to play heroic? This is all you got to do. Make sure that you're not going to one-shot anybody, unless it's something brutally out of the ordinary that happens. That's all you got to do. Try to do, if they crit, try to do 75, 80% of their health. You look at that, it'll put the fear of all the gods in them if they do crit, but it doesn't take the agency of the game away from them, and you're going to have a good time. Everything's going to fall into balance there. Don't worry about all the other stuff. That's what I look at, and that's what, how we play at my table. It's try not to take the player's agency away. Don't do anything to the player characters you wouldn't want done to your encounter, and have that golden rule. Take away a lot of the banishments and the charms and the frightens. We take that stuff out. I want them to make a choice. I want them, if something like that happens, I want them to lose part of their action, or maybe they lose a bonus action, so they have to figure out what they have to do with one hand and 15 feet of movement. It all comes back to that choose your own adventure. I want them to make a choice. I don't want to take the game away from them. I want them to come up with that nat 20 when their back is against the wall and they only have part of their tools. That's what being a hero is in that moment, and having the chance to do it. Got to give them something.
I love that. That's actually that answers another question I was gonna, because I know you do have a lot of house rules, and I love the reasoning behind it. You know, like so many of those rules are just like it's action economy, right? You know, you're
Yeah.
frightened, so your actions are taken away, and now you have to manage that resource and all of those things. You have to work without a person.
And not a
But
big deal if you're playing tactile and everybody knows that you are, and you're playing a war game, then game on. But when you're invested in telling a story, it's not your job to tell them how that person feels. It's all about being on the same page. You can do both. It is perfectly fine, acceptable, and looks like D&D and smells like D&D. You just got to be on the same page of it and want that. And you know, that's cool. I've played D&D where it's been very much PvP based, and we're here to win, and we want to try to win within those rules, and that's cool and fun. It's a good time when you want to take down
Everyone's on the same
CR
page.
creature. Yeah. But as long as you're on that same page, then that's cool.
That's
but
it. You set expectations. It always comes back to session 0.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because we've heard some stories. I know Evan has mentioned in the past. I don't remember the details about it, but they were like in this big boss fight, and something happened where his character couldn't go for 2 rounds in a row, whether he was like stunned or something like that. I'm butchering the story a little bit, but he was like,
enough said.
I was just watching 8 people play this game that I wanted to participate in.
It's miserable.
He's like, it just wasn't the same. It was not the same experience.
No, man, that sucks. Nobody wants to see that on their player's face. Like there's no reason for that to happen in a story-based game for it to go down like that. You can fix it. There are ways where somebody's gonna help out with a reaction or a bonus action. You start having fun with it about how they can get that other player back active again. But it's on your players to do that too. It's not just on the DM or the GM. It's about making sure that they know that, hey, my friend at the table is suffering right now because they can't do anything. I need to burn my reaction to go and help that. And that's one thing that we do really big is we teach that, like, you can help at any piece. I'm going to allow that help, whether it's splitting up your actual action where you only swing once and I'll let you help do something, or you can do that as your bonus or your reaction, always trying to help your fellow players at the table. And that's what makes it feel very Avengers-like and very party, and help them out break these different things. Because then the fear is set in. This could happen. We don't want it to last longer than a turn, but now we have ways to do it, and we're able to create narrative with it as well.
Yeah, have you ever like put together a document or anything like that has some of these extra rules, or you're just kind of?
Oh, we're doing it now, and it's so bad. It's so bad. If I just written down each piece as it evolved, it would be great. But as all things, these rules have all come out on the table. I don't sit down and write this stuff down. I just go and play. But that's my style. I want to learn at the table. I don't want to sit back and think about it. I want to go do. And through playing, I'm going to find out what works and what doesn't work. And now we're creating the wikis and the pieces of all that to make it clear for other folks that drop in and be like, whoa, what is going on here?
Sort of feels like something I know. And everybody's laughing and I'm into it. Yeah.
Exactly.
I really love the thing that just struck me about that the most is just how invested everybody is at your table and everybody else's enjoyment. And that really is going to shine through any system that you're playing. You could just go play with your D4 the whole time if everybody's just having a good time. Maybe not if you step on one, but
that's what makes a session with just skill checks so much fun. You get folks invested in just dice skill checks, you're going to have a hell of an RP session, because it could be eating pies, it could be racing, it could be doing anything that you would normally do with a group of your friends throughout the day, and you're rolling dice for it. But it goes back, man. You got to learn to love each other at the table, and that's what it's about. That's what, at the 100%. End of the day, it's your fellowship. You need to you're gonna find your Samwise, you're gonna find your Frodo, and that's the and what the best part is when you sit down at the table and you don't know each other at all, and you become fantasy friends. You don't even know shit about their life. You have a shared experience of being a fantasy character with them, and you know all these bits and pieces about their personality in a fantasy world that you shared. You have little clue what happens in the real world with them, and like, but you've been there, you've been through struggles and worked through things out at the table, and like you start to understand where pieces come from, and you end up becoming closer with them than you are with anybody else within your life. And that's one of the addicting parts. The social bond that you get from being at a table is the best when it works right.
That reminds me so much. Yeah, it just reminds me so much of like when, like with Evan. I mean, we kind of we had only hung out with him a few times in his Twitch stream, but nothing really beyond that. And then for some reason we were just like, I just feel like this is the last piece of our cast for our game, and I consider him one of my best friends. You know, a year and a half later, whatever it's been, you're 100% on point with that. And you know, we talk about that in our table talk with him too. He's awesome.
That was how I was introduced to just the game in general. Like I knew Jake from Destiny. We used to raid together. We had a clan together, and then was invited to his real life table because I found out
he lived. You live on Long Island too? Cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, if it weren't for Destiny, I would have never had Twitch on. The only reason I was watching because I would play Destiny after I got done with the bar. I would go LFG and go get my stuff done. And it was like late night. To me, it felt like when World of Warcraft was a family, and early on in raiding, and when it was a very like communal thing before systems had been in place to openly queue. So I was like, this is great. It feels like that again. I love that. That's why I had Twitch open in the first place. And I didn't recognize anybody at first, and that's how I found it. It's wild how Destiny is connected a ton of people in a certain range. And obviously anybody that's affiliated with Rare Drop, that's part of it. That's how the GCX family has kind of been built out from SweatCon to here.
Yeah, I mean, Josh and I had known Kevin and Wayne and some of those guys for, I actually met them from when we were younger in church, but like, I remember seeing one of them, I don't know if it was Kevin or Wayne, posted something on Facebook like about Destiny, and I was like, oh, I play Destiny. And we're like, you play Destiny? And it was like we were instantly there again. It's like, dude, you got to do this thing. And Kevin was like, yo, I'm doing this thing called Twitch. Do you know what that is? I was like, no. And I remember we were on patrol on the moon, and he was like, "Here, say something. You can get on this Skype call with me." I was like, "All right." I just have it plugged into my phone. I'm like, "Can you hear me? Like, what's going on?" And he's like, "Yeah, man, the internet can hear you. I have 2 viewers, and you're one of them."
Kevin is also how I found Twitch too. Like he was doing Worst Radio Show back then, and my brother was like, "Oh, you gotta check out like Kevin and Andy's podcast back then." That's what it was, and discovered Twitch through there, and man, that's what you could say wasted a lot of my time on Destiny because of that afterwards, because I was a casual player before I knew what Twitch was. But
I was cleaning my inventory out before I hopped on this call for Witch Queen.
I love that. See, there you go.
Still clean. Now I don't play 3 characters anymore. I don't have time for 3 characters anymore. At one point in time, rating broke me with that. It was probably at the very the very end of D1. What's the raid? King's Fall. King's Fall broke me.
Yep.
King's Fall is what broke me from raiding 3 characters. I was like, all right, we're just
hard mode. We'd get 2 Oryx, and then our group would just not get it done. It just wasn't happening.
Well, it switched, and it stopped from being a mechanic where you could carry, where everybody had to do. It became weak chain.
That's
why I don't raid much to this day, because it's because it's weak chain. I enjoyed learning and then being like, okay, let's bring 2 friends along. Let's do it. Now it's like, no, you bring one and they need to have read the tutorial.
They know, yeah.
have
Did they
to
watch
have
the video?
Come on, man. I just want to play the video game.
Yeah.
I'm 37 years old. I got D&D that's better than this. All right.
Exactly.
I'm just trying to shoot some guns, you know?
That actually, that really probably was the moment I think our group, I don't want to say like fell apart, because that's not true. I feel like we're all friends, but like we really, that gung-ho raid feeling kind of stopped there. I mean,
The hours you had to put in got steep.
Yes,
it got steep, and they started doing a lot of the random mechanics where it was like, come on, let your best player knock this out. They would randomly do the switches where you'd have to do jump puzzles and different pieces with your worst player. And all that did, it wasn't like, okay, hey, tonight, it just made it feel bad. It became a bad taste. And people would get angry at each other because you're trying to value each other's time unless it was a learning session. And, you had a lot of dads of Destiny where I'm like, I got 2 hours when I turn this Xbox or this PlayStation on in the basement before I got to go to bed. Like, I got to get stuff done.
100%.
For whatever reason, I loved King's Fall. I had a lot of fun in it, but I think I played a lot, but I was still always more of a casual player. Like, if I spent the whole night playing the raid and we didn't finish it, I would just be like, all right, whatever. Like, I still had fun.
Yeah, you'd always just be like, I'm just hopping along on my warlock. I don't care about the other two.
Exactly.
I know I did the raid already on my warlock. That's what I do.
When I say it broke me, I still enjoyed the shit out of it.
Yeah,
sure.
When I say it broke me, I still, there was no 80 hour I played on that. I've made so many friends, had such a good time. Like, it wouldn't bother me unless it was like somebody was like, hey, you need to pull out your sniper rifle. Back in the day, we were like, hey, this is precision damage. You got to put that sword away, bud. Like, we can't move. Like, I'm looking up and go, there's nothing I can do other than telling you that you have to switch that weapon for us to go forward. We can't. It won't happen. There's no weapons of light. There's no way I can save you. You got to do this.
Yeah.
Like, no, I'm going to take care of some ads. No, you see, there's this thing called a DPS check. I know this is.
You see how it says you did 2,000 damage and everybody else is doing 300,000 damage? We know what's going on here.
That's where it got World of Warcraft, because before you could stumble through, you could do some random stuff, and it was like, no, this is the real deal.
Yeah.
Oh boy,
that's so funny. I'm glad we all had that shared experience.
Oh yeah,
definitely.
Something that's super fun these days.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Is that how you got involved with Rare Drop? Was it through Destiny?
Yeah, through Destiny. Because I showed up as a community member at SweatCon 1 with Goth and Broman and Leah Loves Chief and T-Rex. So I just showed up, like, I knew nobody, and that's where I met Nelstar, and he became my first friend in the industry. And me, him, and Char drank Amberbach pitchers until we howled at the moon at that tiny little Miller's Ale House that we bombed and just destroyed this place. So, it was awesome. I showed up. I bring some of them still have them. They have my original bar mugs, which, hey, now it's a collector's item because they don't exist anymore. So I came and I had these loot chests. I went to a party supply store when I got down there, and I had 6 of my mugs. And I gave them the first 6 people I watched play Destiny all got a big Broadway Beer Garden sign, or Broadway Beer Garden Stein with our logo on it and whatnot. So that was pretty cool. So I came in with all these loot chests and started slamming pitchers, and nerds were like, what's going on here? There's always the division of like how the group splits up, especially in these. There's some people that are like, okay, it's going to be a casual meetup. And then there's a couple of the older, like, uncle folks. They're like, I need this. This is a vacation. Like,
Like, you don't understand how many children I have.
Yeah, and there was all these dads that came over for that one. They were like they were like resorts around. They were like, yeah, we play Destiny, and we just snuck over here. Like, we knew we could get away for a couple of hours. Like, hilarious. The people I met at SweatCon 1. And I met all the creators and whatnot, and just had a blast. Me and Nell, which everyone vacated the city. There was no night 2, but me and Nell stayed the whole weekend. So we're like, what? So we went out together after we became best friends, and then we just destroyed Tampa the next day and went to every single bar we could possibly find, and had a blast. And this was before he was in the industry too. He was just a player then, and so it all, like, that was our focal point. It pulled us in.
We'll do that.
That's great.
So do you have any? Go ahead.
That's where I met half this chat. I'll be honest.
You make these connections that you don't necessarily, maybe you're not aware of it at the time, but they really do become what I believe will be lifelong friends. It's crazy.
No doubt.
Like, Josh, when's the last time we gamed with Blake?
With Blake?
Yeah, easily 2 years ago. He texted me the other day. He was just like, "Hey man, just been thinking about you. How you doing?" Like, that's the kind of thing where you're like, he doesn't do Twitch or anything like that anymore. He's doing his thing, and he just,
yep.
That's it. And that's really what it's all about, which is also what it's all about with D&D.
Steer it back.
but it's true. It really is. Like, that's how I met Josh. That's how that whole thing happened, and now J&J is a thing. It's just that kind of a connection is really cool.
Absolutely.
Would you say that like it seems like that's definitely part of the reason behind you making D&D content? Is it for those storytelling, for the connections? Like, is there?
So before I got into the bar business, I made a decision that I was going to become a business owner instead of go to Chicago and go to Second City Improv, because, like any big kid that grew up in the Midwest, that ever entertained people, Chris Farley and John Candy, yep, and Belushi, those guys were your heroes. And I loved improv, but I made the choice that I would much rather be a business owner inside my family after Farley's death, because I realized what the road and, like, how brutal it was to be a comedian and to live that life. And I knew that that's not what I wanted. And so I made the choice to instead create my own stage and be behind the bar. And I enjoyed every minute of it. It was a blast. I've been there from nightclub era to dive bar to the end of my craft bar days, and I enjoyed every bit up until COVID hit. It was a blast. It was awesome. That's where I've heard the craziest, absolute bonkers I will ever hear in my life. Standing back behind there, I've been introduced to more people, ways, things. You become a jack of all trades. You can have a conversation with anything when you spend that much time in the bar industry. You see everybody's triumphs. You see their heartbreaks. A bar is the Feywild, 100% in D&D, because it is emotions cranked. It's every emotion cranked up to 10. So I'm performing back behind the bar, being a larger than life version of myself to entertain. The people that come in are either as happy as they can get, or they're as sad as they possibly could be, or they're in the middle and they're going to go one way or the other when they come in. When they're melancholy, it's going to go whichever way. So it's this odd extreme social searching that a bar becomes. And I lived that life and I loved it, and it was everything that I wanted. But at the end of the day, I got that itch again for, like, a bigger stage and another challenge. There's only so many seats. There's only 100, 150 at that point in time in my last incarnation. And this whole, like, oh wow, we're getting an audience off of online. I started thinking about, I think I would rather be than just a local personality. I think I would like to go online and apply my trade to that because I'm a big Anthony Bourdain guy at the same time. So like I understand like the restaurant rock star kind of enjoyment of the stage and what the territory brings. So I watched how people were doing this, the business was structured, and I set it up to be a side hobby business from the beginning that I knew would be monetized no matter what. And it was good that I did have that clear expectations of what I was doing at a table early, that I was like, hey, guys, this is always a side hustle that is going to be there. Who knows where it goes? It's just another investment in me that I get to work a creative outlet with. And luckily I had it because when hit the fan, and COVID took away the marketplace, I had another marketplace to go to ply my trade as a raconteur and to be able to have a stage again and entertain people and get to do something that I loved for work because I'm unemployable. I'm a horrible ass. Nobody when you have those genes. I come from an old German family. We came off the boat. We have not worked for anybody but ourselves in 5 generations. You can't make employees out of those people. We're stubborn. We're in our ways, and we will work as hard as we can to create whatever it is we're gonna create, and we're gonna be happy doing it. And I was lucky enough, just very, very, very fortunate, because these things, when it comes to marketplaces, it's just about timing. Like anything else, if you have investments, you realize that a lot of times it's sitting around waiting for that 1 week of the year where you make all your gains. And this is the what we do and all this is the wild, wild west. And it's fun to be able to dip your toes into it for a little bit, but most people don't get to do a full-time slot. So I'm very, very, very fortunate that the economics work out for me, that I live in an area where I can do it. You couldn't, the people that start up and do this in the most expensive areas of the country, like I blows my mind how they're ever able to make things work, because it's nuts.
That's why my wife and I moved to South Carolina. We just, Long Island got very, very expensive, and we miss it. It is still our home, it is what it is. But I totally get that. I used to work in a restaurant when I was there, and I was like, man, because we've been here for almost 5 years now. And I just think, like, if COVID had hit while I was depending on that, my wife's name's Kim. I was like, Kim, we would have moved in with your parents. Like, who knows what's going on? I'm
still here. My camera's overheated, but it'll be back in a second.
Oh, no.
My air conditioning went out today inside the office. So I stream out of a co-working space, and it's awesome, but it's the only 2 streets in my town that have fiber.
Oh. Okay.
Until like the end of the year. So I've been in here for like almost 5 years now.
Wow.
Interesting.
Into the spot.
Very
yeah. So I have a tiny little like closet-sized office with all these lights and the computers. So it gets a little toasty whenever the AC drops.
Yeah.
It goes from my cool 65 to up to 80 real quick.
That's so incredible that you were able to, you started off with that like improv dream and comedy dream, moved it. You were able to have all of those bar experiences and do that, and then get right back to it. Maybe not exactly how you had planned, years back, but
like in life, you never know how that stepping stone's going to go, but I got there. I found a way to get there, but get to do it on my terms instead of being told. I would have never made it in that atmosphere of scripts and how the entertainment business worked. I would have got chewed up. Wouldn't have liked it. Would have came back. Being able to have ownership of it is a whole, like, I got to have both sides then. I found a way to incorporate my need to have a small business, like I've been taught from my parents and my grandparents and my great grandparents, and have something that's mine, but still get to do an entertainment section. And I'm telling you right now, if all the actors on Broadway had this kind of opportunity, they would have done this. This is why you always hear them talk about they would love to just have been actors on Broadway their entire life, but they can make no money in doing so. We get to do on an amateur level what all the great actors, Patrick Stewart and across the board, wish that they got an opportunity to do, because they want to bring their characters to life. They don't want to be handheld and over directed and micromanaged, and we get to do that like every day that we sit down at the table. Like, how cool is that? I think it's one of the addicting draws of how much agency we have in storytelling, and such a unique opportunity. And that's where everybody's seeing it now, where they're going, oh wow, I get this now. I totally, whereas before they heard Dungeons and Dragons and they thought of a totally different thing inside their mind of what these nerds were doing. And now it's like, whoa. This is like, they're literally coming up with a show run script on the spot. And now it's like, this is advanced stuff. The perception changed like that.
It did. I think another key moment in that, I think, was Stranger Things coming into play a little later in the game, but it was still something where it put a much more polished look to, this is just kids being kids and having fun, and
the cultural come together of those. We're very lucky that those little pieces like that in media that have a much broader audience that could see that for the first time and go, well, I love these kids. These are cool. I identify with them. Whoa, right. They play D&D? What? They ride bikes just like I do? Oh, yeah. So that it gave people, it was funny seeing people get that check of like, yeah, that's what I did. That's what you made fun of, especially like Gen Xers that grew up that like, that's really based around. They're like, yeah, like this is what we did and it was awesome and you should have played. Yeah. But now they have the opportunity, like, I want to play. I want to do this now.
Never too late.
You've been doing it your whole life. You've been telling, we're innate as a species. We tell stories. That's how we pass down everything before we had the capability of being able to archive it. So like everybody has that ability within them. It's about bringing it out.
I like that. Do you have any particular content creators that like? I mean, Critical Role is obviously the most upfront and visual one, but are there any like D&D content creators that you look to and just think like, I just really just adore what they do, and it like
Classy Pax.
Classy Pax. Okay, I don't think I've heard.
Classy Pax is an improver and he did GTA RP back in the day and did some of the coolest story arcs. Very thought out, professional improver, method actor. He is phenomenal. He'll do flight simulations that are all the way through in character. Whatever he does is generally based in trying to get his head wrapped around whatever kind of character that he's in. He does a absolute phenomenal job with whatever he does. I've always been in awe of him, and it's one of those I have reached out before and been like, oh man, I would love at some point in time, I would love to collaborate on a project. But I'm always infatuated with what he does, and I like to check in and see what they're working on. For anybody that's out there, you can check out his Mr. Oaks serial killer arc that's out there on YouTube. It is phenomenal. It has a ton of other content creators that collaborate with him on it. And it's on the old family RP server that used to be around. It's great. You'll enjoy it. He soundtracks like I do. He does all the little bits. He's controlling the camera in a cinematic way. Absolute stud. Love him as a professional. Djibouti Dubs. I love their humor. And they're collaborating together as a team. Whenever they play anything, they can make anything fun and like an enjoyable experience. But I met them from also doing a little bit of GTA RP with Classy. At one point in time, they had essentially like a Hobos Avenger alliance that was just the greatest arc I had ever seen. I never
All right.
laughed so hard in my life that they had they created a whole pantheon within their head of what was going on in the city, and they're always, there's a storm brewing. It was all made up in their characters' heads, but they played this this wonderful story out. I enjoy them immensely. When it comes to just like a straight up D&D stream, the one that I always would check on probably the most as far as like a technological, when it was going on, when JP was still streaming, when roleplay was still on, because they would push the boundaries of what technology they could get. They made me go on a 1-year rabbit hole to try to find better video conferencing than what Zoom could offer, because I would sit there and I watched, and now it's like, it's amazing. You have all these great options. Plug for Theo over at Ping, which is what we use now, which is amazing. Crystal clear, 1080p, 60 frames. It's absolutely just a dream to use now. But we used a Russian web conferencing server for almost 4 years called True Conference, and they were pushing the boundaries of what technology they could get their hands on and making the cleanest looking show. And those bits always inspire me about someone who's always trying to polish the egg. And that was from kind of his technology side. And I always, I respected the hell out of High Rollers over in the UK, the biggest UK show. They were always the staple of friends at the table, like that very, very, very accessible, having a great time. Sherlock Holmes does a great job. I think they do a good job of representing still what at-home D&D is, and it's not intimidating for folks. It can be, I think they're a great gateway for anybody that wants to elevate their role play, but they're not consumed with how intimidating Critical Role can look in its current fashion, where it is so method acted and expecting a lot of other players that aren't quite there in their role play life yet. So I think both of those are a great example of what's out there now. Now everybody's got a great overlay. Like if you look at it now, like most of the shows, they're pretty freaking polished, man. Like most people starting out, like they don't start out raw very much anymore. Like everybody's got custom overlays now. Like everybody uses everybody's got a leg up in that division, where like visually you're all right. Now the problem is now most people overdo it. Now what I see is everybody puts too much shit on their screen. It went from being very barren to now it's just clutter.
Yeah, I can see that. Now we've been talking with Paul a lot about a lot of it's going to be based off of the stuff that I guess was made for the update with your show, but also just like I've been feeling. Actually, I was talking with Michael and Josh, and Michael's like, "There's just a lot of stuff going on. I want to clean it up." So it's interesting because that's how we've been feeling too.
Get back to your roots. Like focus on what's important.
The game.
You end up with a bottom bar that's 18 people thick, and I got a giant image of what I am over in the corner, and I'm over here. At the end of the day, I tell people that doesn't matter. They want to focus on your reaction. And whether you're playing an audio-based game where it's important for to hear the reaction first, or whether it's visually, like that's the juice, because that's what we're craving as people. We want to see other people enjoying themselves and going through an array of emotions. And that's what I always tell people. That's the first thing that you need to knock out. And if there's anything you invest your time in, it's audio.
Yeah.
Because people are going to turn your stream off. You sound like jank, and you're megaphoneed up, and sounds horrible, then you're gonna move on. You're gonna go to the next stream.
Absolutely.
That's what you hear now. Like, you spend a little bit, and it doesn't have to be. You spend 10 minutes on Google, you can clean that up. But like, that's a whole other story. It's like you get to a point where you have so much information, you start to have a de-evolution. Things become so easily inaccessible. People just expect to be like, oh, can you fix that mic for me? No, you need to learn. You need to learn how this device works and like presence and like actually understand how a microphone works. Not talking over here. Hold on, I'm looking for my book. My book at. You know, learn a little bit of mic presence.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we're going kind of late. I have 2 questions for you if you still have a little bit of time left.
Oh yeah, I got plenty of time.
All right. First off, so I've never had a TPK before. I see. I know. Going back to Rare Drop, and I haven't been DMing for long, but going back to Rare Drop roleplay, with the Reckoning Hour game, I know that there was a TPK.
Yeah.
Was that your first TPK? And which is what was that like? What was
first on stream? There? First on stream? Oh man. I mean, spoilers. I mean, I decapitate my friend, hold it up. Oh yeah,
no.
I loved every minute of it. It was
for the first part of this, you established such a warm, cultivating image, and you're now celebrating the enjoyment of chopping off your friend's head. Got it. Okay.
No, okay. So what it's like, you're in a duality because you're trying to play your antagonist in their fashion. At the same way you are when you see your friends and their arms are crossed and they are so sad and it is going down, you are absolutely like, oh my God, this is you're like any other room. You're not saying anything. As a friend, you're just kind of being there for them, and you're trying to tell a good story, and your villains are having a real good time. And they depending on where they're at on the scale, it can be brutal. And that was one of a god of chaos and mischief, and had them set up, and they went and they kept storming the castle, and they just couldn't. There was no. I gave all my recommendations, and I will sit down and stop and I will go, as your DM, I'm just gonna let you know that these are the odds. And what's going on, this is where we're headed. Like, I'll openly sit down and be like, hey, this is not going to be a surprise. If you push and you don't figure out a way to creatively get out of this, the repercussions are going to be steep. And, we went through all those, and I was proud. I did my checks where I need to do my checks. I was the first one to die. My character was the first one to die, which usually when your healer goes down,
I was going to say, when the cleric is out, you're in trouble.
Cleric's out, you're in trouble.
Yes. Always.
There is no point in time did I sit out before that session and go, I'm killing these guys. Night's the night. Now, what happens is sometimes folks get so in their character's head that they play it out just like a movie too. And they get, they play their part, and some people don't stop. They go what I call full 10 cup, just like the movie, just take another drop. And you'll see that in life. Like that's what will happen. Some people will take that drop until they drown. And that's exactly what happened in that session. I love the hard cut. If you ever do it, you don't say a word. The last person dies, you just cut it. Cut the feed. No words. That's what it needs to be, to respect the silence and to honor those characters. That's what it deserves. And I'm glad we did it right. We did, and as a performance, I mean, how better is that? Because you have an audience that's grieving. Your players are grieving.
Everybody's just like,
and then you come back to the table.
Just looking around. Somebody hold me.
Somebody help me. Is that going to be permanent or not? You know, and I've done it off camera. I've had TPK off camera. It's just as dramatic because then you got standing up and pacing. It's different. It's a little bit different. It depends on how they share their emotions on it. But when you TPK in person, man, pack up is awkward. Oh, pack up is awkward.
So I had fun, guys. See you later. Okay. Maybe we can do this again sometime.
It's easier to be disconnected a little bit on this and be like, hey, we told a great story. We'll talk about it. And that's what I always say. I don't say it's not over yet, but what I do is I lay out the facts. I lay it like a crime scene. I'm like, you don't have you were in pieces. You are melted and not there anymore. This is the state. And I go, there really is no salvaging this. If there's a spot where you can, where it's like, okay, we have someone, unfortunately they passed away, we got most of a body, there's things that we can do. There's stuff that can happen. But what I try to do is get them to respect the story and where it goes at the same time. And it's all about, we're not trying to win, we're trying to tell the best story. And if that's how it went down, then that's how it went down. And most of the time, my groups are gung-ho and they're like, you know what? I go down a blaze of glory, then I will wear that TPK. I will wear that as a flag. You know, I'll wear that as a badge of honor. You know, that I went down swinging. And some nights, when crits pop up and they keep popping up, and you feel that momentum shift, just like it's a sports game. You're like, there is no rhyme or reason. If that party doesn't back down, you know they're gonna die, or someone's gonna. At least I can pretty well tell when I know someone's gonna die. When that starts happening, and they're not adjusting to the level of damage that's coming in, and they're not mitigating, and then all of a sudden others, it's a full breakdown. Then others stop helping each other, and it becomes me versus what that one thing is in front of me, and you lose focus as a team and what's good for the unit, and then you get picked apart piece by piece. It's hard. Some groups, they don't want to run. They don't want to find a way out. They don't want to fight the next day. They don't want to come back another session, but sometimes you have to. Sometimes the odds aren't. Sometimes I didn't sit down and make this to be fair. You're against somebody that's way more powerful than you, and you got to be cunning about it. And you learn from those situations. And you know, sometimes your learning lesson as a DM ends up becoming a fatality, and you didn't mean that. You wanted to just you wanted to show how strong something could be, and all of a sudden you're like, that's where when it gets into it, that's where I feel bad if I don't convey that situation of like, I'm showing strength. I'm not trying to get you in something you can't win. I'm showing you what the odds are, and you need to come back and be stronger. If you miscommunicate on that and you have it, and they're like, they think they're getting in something that's winnable, that may be a 25% chance based off of where they're at, and then the dice run wild. That's where it's, but most of the time that's where I'm going to pull back, or I'm going to change something. I'm only going to go all out when it's like, we know we're coming to a clash, and I've said, you know, hey, the consequences are on the line. People know when there's a chance of like, like when there's a chance to die, I make sure to tell everybody, like, this is the real deal tonight. Like, get ready, buckle your seatbelts. Like, it's going to go down, and they respect that. And you know, that's just, once again, being on the same page with your players.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, I did watch that one. I think you did a very good job of putting the video game, like, you know, giant red X above the head, like with the, like, you know, this is gonna be tough, like, you know, that kind of thing.
Thank you.
But yeah, I'm sure that was like, as awful as that must be, like, in the moment, if you go out in a blaze of glory, and if you treat it with respect, and especially if there's a chat that's in there too, I feel like it makes it instead of just like my character died, it's a special moment, and it's something you're never gonna forget.
You'll never forget. your characters change, you change. Having having mortality at the table makes everything else work. It's something you want to, it needs to be reserved for special moments. And when it happens, it galvanizes so much, just like it does in real life. And it needs to be there. You can't walk everything back. And having that threat of mortality is what makes the system work.
Yeah.
Completely agree. And I know as a player, like if I don't remember how long ago it was, someone asked like, what would you have done if, if Vale died during this? And I said, well, as long as I felt like his death had meaning, I'd be like, that was Vale's story. I'm going to make my next guy, like, here we go.
Yeah. Like
and they're like, really? I was like, well, yeah, I mean, I love him. It's still a game. And it's not like I died. This is just a way we're discussing what could happen at the table. And like I said, I just wanted to have some kind of meaning. That's it.
So here's a great example to kind of go out on. There, in our campaign, Baldur's Gate, there's everybody will know Adam's character Asher, and this is his favorite D&D character he's ever made. Absolutely emotionally attached. This is their favorite that they have played. And they went out in an awful way of rolling a nat 1, manipulating a sphere of annihilation.
Yikes.
Oh, no.
And Adam happens to roll a lot of nat 1s. Statistically, a scary amount of nat 1s.
Okay.
And this is just kind of known, and it started as a meme, but it has not changed now since the 2.5 years that we played. And his character, like, he is annihilated right there at the end of this fight. And it is this awful time where I know that now, like, going into a boss fight, I have my buddy that is grieving the loss of their favorite character. And we go and we make a suitable one that's like connected in the story, that's awesome. But we're going to be real honest. That character is Batman. That character is dark, and it's just all it has is revenge on its mind. That's how we set it up, because that's in his mind. That's what's going on. He's going to kill this boss with this character, but this character doesn't have the emotional depth to be in with the rest of the party for the long haul. And I'm realizing that I need this character and its energy to make the party, to round it out where it was at. Otherwise, there's like some character dynamics need to happen. Like, we need a different person or a different character. Otherwise, this thing is just going to kind of get dark. And I'm not telling him, and I'm certainly not agreeing to somehow bring his character back. But what I do is I start to play out his character in the afterlife and what it's like. Because I want him to know that he's still there. Because that's my buddy losing his character. So what do? We put him in the Feywild with one of my old characters that's an Archfey that's out there in Chikios, and they have tea and they have conversations in the afterlife, and he gets to watch his friends and help from beyond the grave in a cinematic scene during the final battle.
I love that.
And he's manifesting as much energy as he can to try and affect and help his old party. And I leave it at that, because that in itself, that's what I was looking for. I want to give him closure and to know that Asher's not gone. He's just on another adventure now. And that was what was important to have for him, to have that little bit of closure with it. Well, it just so happened, as we played through, this is when the Witchlight Carnival comes through and Witchlight drops. And I'm going in my head as a DM, I'm going, I'll be damned if I've never seen a sign before like that. And so I start leading him on little breadcrumbs and teasing in episodes of him going through the Feywild. And much of it is just a completion of like, okay, I'm going to tie a loose end up for him. But in the back of my mind, I'm looking at it and going, what a way that this might cross back over. And so he spends 14 years within the Feywild and then happens to bring up his regular big story arc of what's going on with his character's backstory, and it ends up with these portals opening up into the Feywild, and I bring his character back. through the randomness of Wizards releasing something in the Feywild and it happening to be perfectly crossing over when they came back into Baldur's Gate. So 5 or 6 sessions later, a 14-year, almost older version of his character reappears and gets to come back, and he is of flesh and blood on that plane. And it just worked out that way. It wasn't by design. It just, I let the story evolve there, and it felt right. So we respected death. We did what was necessary, and then we made something extra cool in how he came back. And now that dark Batman character like that we built, that's not made and meant to be with that party all the time. Now he's this NPC that they love to meet up, because when they know they're in the deepest, darkest parts of society, that's where this guy dwells. And he becomes their conduit of navigating the underworld. So now he has a greater importance than he ever did. We have a character that's returned back that honored death and honored the story, and my buddy has his favorite character back. And it just worked that way. Wasn't pre-planned, but we got there. And when you see those, like as a DM in a story, when you see those lines navigating there, let it go, because that became the clear and right path.
That sounds incredible. That must have been. I can only imagine what he felt like when that happened. But it sounds amazing.
We shed some tears on it. It was good. It was a good feeling. It was the coolest narrative gift I could ever give to anybody, of circling it back and making it relevant. Because going out and we're on a 1 on a Sphere of Annihilation is pretty brutal.
Yeah.
Pretty brutal stuff.
Yeah, 100%. That's
pretty brutal stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And man, there had been a slight bit of miscommunication of when he was asking me how to manipulate it, and it was going through, and I was like, remember, 1s are 1s in my campaign. Critical failures are failures. You know, he was trying to find, as all my players do, what's the safest way for me to handle anything. And I always tell them, I go, you have a 5% chance to become the greatest hero. You have a 5% chance to lose it all. No matter what, 1s and 20s in all my games cannot be touched, cannot be turned back. They're what we live for. There's always that percentage chance, and that's what allows us to do the most epic things within a game. It also what allows us to do the most heartbreaking things, and both of those are a chance to tell story. So once you do that, you have players loving 1s as much as you do 20s.
I think some of the most memorable times are when you're rolling that 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last
You just have to roll with it.
We had a player go back-to-back 1s in his Black Ops. His brother killed him with a javelin. Back-to-back. Nat 1s. Trying to go and hit the boss. And I said on the second Nat 1, I was like, that's crit damage. And it did. It took our buddy Feisty down. I've never had somebody get downed but you know, back-to-back Snake Eyes, man. That's just, whew, that's rough. But we all remember it. Like, that's what everybody's talked about the entire time post that session, of how hilarious that moment is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man. Do you have any questions for us? I guess, but before we close out, we always like to ask that question.
Do you have any questions?
It's not a big deal if you don't.
I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Okay.
I don't want what your favorite class is. I want the one that you've ended up playing the most.
Oh, okay.
That's a good question.
What do you end up being shoehorned into?
It's got to be some kind of wizard for me. I'm always like, that's my jam.
Gotta have magic.
I'm playing a fighter now, but I was like, I gotta be an Eldritch Knight, and then 5 levels in, I was like, and I'm gonna dip into Warlock because I need more magic too. it's just like any way to, like, just sometimes the funny builds can be. I was like, I want him to be weird, and he is. He's wonderfully
you're
weird.
trying to do something different, you know, trying to do something different at the table.
Exactly. And
more often than not, I always end up generally like some sort of like martial fighter or ranger or anything like that. Probably more dex based than anything else. But I do love playing those character types. So it's like, like even just now we're getting set up for a game that we're going to be running with Blue Dragon Guild, who is in this chat. I don't know if he's still here, but we're talking about it. We're getting everything set up, and they're like, we have this, we have, I'm going to be playing this like sorcerer or whatever, this, that, the other thing. Yeah,
yeah. There it is.
And I'm just looking at it, and I'm like,
I'm my own meme.
I think I'm gonna play a fighter. It sounds like we need a frontline, like we need a fighter, maybe somebody who could do a little healing too. Like I don't know,
yeah.
But
and I'm no different as someone that constantly plays a DMPC. I'm gonna get shoehorned into the last line. Now, every now and then there is someone that's a defined. I love support and I love to heal, but not very often. So I'm lucky it's something that I love to do, and naturally my play type anyway is boistering the table, so I still get all that enjoyment out of it. But if there's a table breakdown, it's somewhere between half and half, druid cleric. I'm always a druid or a cleric. It's going down in between those and running through every subclass I can run through those. And then I sprinkle in a little bit of bard, because usually I always have a bard at my game.
Bards,
it is rare for me not to have a bard, because they understand, anybody that's played, they understand how powerful they are now. There's no the preconceptions of back in the day where like, oh, this isn't going to be fun for me. Now everybody knows the cat's out of the bag. Like if you want like the most tools, like, you're the magic rogue. You can do things with Arcana that are just disgusting.
And that inspiration. I mean, you have someone with great weapon master or sharpshooter at your table, they are just your best friend for life. Period. Like, no, you have no idea how often I take risks because I know I have your help in my back pocket.
100%. You take care of your damage, daddy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That was our Dragon of Icefire Peak. Michael, he just posted in chat. He just kept feeding Josh, who was a polearm master. He did the whole thing. The whole thing.
You can lock down the board, so you're like, feed him. Feed the machine.
Yes. And Michael was just like, I'm gonna inspire Marcus. It was just like every time.
So my new favorite thing is gambling classes. Anything that makes me gamble, like the Spirits Bard, where you send the inspiration out, but you have to roll on the table. You don't know what you get. So you have to roll a d12, and it can be anything from helping heal someone to giving them an attack buff to an escape route where they don't take an attack of an opportunity. I love, because it's removing part of the agency of me to decide, which is perfect for a DMPC, because I'm just trying to be reactionary. Yeah. So it's super cool for me to like, it's just another roll table for me. So I'm like, awesome, this is what I get. I get to work with it. So like I seek out the gambling classes now. That's not like wild magic all over my, I'm not trying to do that. I'll let them go down that route with God knows any means. I don't need to blow them up with a 33 fireball on the table.
Yeah. Do you like the barbarian wild magic one? I'm forgetting the exact name. Yeah.
So much fun.
Okay. Yeah, we have a friend of ours. We have a friend of ours, Josh Matt, was asking about. He's like, I don't know much about barbarians, but I've never really done that before. What should I do? And I was like, I think I already know the answer to this, but do you want to hit the hardest, be able to just tank like a champ, or do you want to add chaos to the group? He's like, you could be a chaos barbarian. I was like, yeah. You're gonna be a wild magic barbarian guy. just look it up.
I had to remove a bear totem from my table. I just had to remove it because people just the meta game was just too strong. It was too strong. So I said, here, there was all these other cool barbarian builds. Please choose you're gonna have so much fun. Don't worry, because it's gonna look that way on paper. I'm just gonna get around it. I'm gonna like, I can't have you be so much stronger than the rest of your friends with having those kind of resistances for so long. We'll end up getting a pathway around it. It's the same way, kind of like sharpshooter and great weapon master. We've dialed that back now because you can do so much damage with it.
Yeah, you can exploit the heck out of things like that. And
Right now, we've
You
experienced
Battlemaster with
doing
precision
it like,
attack, the bardic inspiration. You're just great weapon, great weapon, great weapon, great weapon, great weapon. Josh,
Yeah.
you
I
got
wanted to
me.
do it once. All right,
You
I've
did
never
it, yeah.
played an overpowered character before.
Alright,
I wanted to do it once.
You did it, and honestly, I had fun doing it too as the DM.
a 5e paladin with
It was the knucklehead that
great
gave him a
weapon
flame
master. You can do 60 points, 80 points a swing when you're smiting and great weapon mastering. It can get wild.
Yeah.
Which is fun to do once in a while when you have a character that doesn't understand how strong they are and they're figuring out smites for the first time. And they're like, I did what? What?
Yeah, you crit. You should smite now. You should totally smite now.
This is not the tank paladin that you thought video game wise that you were getting into. This thing can do some serious work.
Yeah, they are. They do a little bit of everything, and they do all of it really well.
Hella good.
Paladins are nobody can burst like a paladin.
No. Captain, thank you so much for joining us. It was really great to have you here, and really great
Absolutely.
to actually like be able to chat and get to know you, and introduce
great evening,
you to all
boys.
of our friends. So we posted it in chat a few times. It's right under your picture here. But for anyone listening on audio, where can they find you?
You can find me, Captain RoBear, at everything. So it's Captain RoBear. And we play D&D over on my channel, twitch.tv/Captain RoBear, pretty much Tuesday through Thursday, 9 p.m. Central Time every night. We're doing 4 to 5 campaigns a week. We got one commissioned with the community members that pop up on Sundays and Saturdays. But as always, you can go to discord.gg/Captain RoBear, and you can catch all the sweet announcements and figure out what's going on and when it's going on there. And if you want to hear me yabbering about, mindless nonsense, hop over on twitter.com/Captain RoBear, and you can pick up on all the ridiculousness of the cocktail party that is the internet.
Yes,
That's a great way to describe the internet.
it is. Yeah,
I stole that one from Gary Vee.
there you go.
Okay, all right.
But I just want to say I appreciate just how much clear joy you exude when you're talking
Yeah.
about this game, because that's like I feel like everybody has a certain spark of just something about them that makes them special, and I just feel like that was just so present here today. So
And
thank
you
you
can't
very
fake
much for
that.
sharing that.
I appreciate your kindness.
Everybody puts a content face on sometimes, but you can't fake that.
course.
Like that's
No. I just found myself smiling at the dumbest stuff. I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, all right, let's do this. Like, let's go.
It's the Santa Claus effect. You can only have a big jolly guy laughing for so long before you do too. It's how this works.
Oh,
That's a
boy.
great way to put it. So on that note, everybody, thank you for hanging out. Again, you could find him at Captain RoBear pretty much anywhere. You could find us at JNJtabletop also pretty much anywhere. And if you didn't catch all of this, it will be on YouTube probably later this week, something like that. Just stay tuned to Twitter and all that, and we'll post the VOD. But
Got a
until
special little song from Josh coming up.
oh no,
For our ending here, so definitely stick through for that.
never record a song as a joke and
Yep.
send it to someone. That's if there's a lesson you could learn tonight, that's the lesson. But
I'm here
we'll
for
see.
it.
We'll see you guys on Sunday, and if you want to see RoBear, he's live pretty much always too.
Yes,
So
yes,
check out his channel.
absolutely. Take care, everybody.
Have a good night, everyone. Thanks again for joining us.
Listen, got something to say. Gonna talk about some tabletop things, get some stuff off my mind. Just bear with me, alright? J&J, there's something I gotta say. You could watch him every week. New videos Wednesday, talking tabletop, community pop. All the GMs send us DMs so that we could talk shop. Got the how-tos, the playthroughs, everything on YouTube. You know I got a view, and they even got a Twitch too. Oh man. So you could like, comment, subscribe to the channel, watch the group discussions and listen to the panel. Got the class intros in Dungeons and Dragons. Fight night winners claim the rights and start the bragging. Ice by your peak Thursday night of every week, so pick your spells, pick your feats, favorite backgrounds, athlete. That's a joke. You gotta watch the videos. Doobly doo, links to coffee for you. It's true that we do all the things that we do, and the J is for Josh, but the J is for Jake. For goodness sake, play that Dungeons and Drake. Oh man, I just hope that you guys know that this isn't serious. This is me just having some fun, and maybe we'll use it in a video, maybe we won't. But links in the doobly doo. Follow us, like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want us to do more silly things like this, then just let me know in the comments. So everybody have a great night. Like, comment, subscribe. Follow us on all those links in the doobly doo, and stay safe. Have fun in your games.